Dollars and Cents: How We Misthink Money and How to Spend Smarter. Dr. Dan Ariely, Jeff Kreisler, Harper Paperbacks, 2018. Many useful tips to understand the psychological side of money, realize that our spending could be more rational, understand how and why it is important to carefully think about what to spend our money on. The author, Dan Ariely, is a professor of psychology and behavioral economics at Duke University. He founded the Center of Advanced Hindsight, where he studies behavioral inventions that help people wise up in their relationship with money and inevitably become happier, healthier, and richer. Dan was the co-creator of the documentary Dishonesty: The Truth of the Lies. He lives in North Carolina with his family. Jeff Kreisler is a Princeton-educated lawyer who later became an award-winning actor and author. He feels that the study of behavioral economics is something that society really needs. He had the idea that serves the study of behavioral economics. The New York Times calls him delectable. His first book was the satire Get Rich Cheating. What is our view on money and how can we change it? Most of us think about money pretty often. How much we have, how much we need, how to get more, and how to get the things that we want. This book is not a financial anthology, neither is it a summary of what we should do with our money. We are going to take a closer look at what we think about money and what are the gaps between our conscious understanding of money, of how money works, the way we actually use money, and how we should rationally think about money and use it. So throughout this book, we are going to look at the situation from another point of view. We are going to look at the biggest and most common mistakes that we make when we interact with money and the reasons why we make these classic mistakes. All this will help us fully understand how to detach ourselves and make better financial decisions, or at least the most appropriate decision for the situation at hand. What is money? Values and ways to use it. 1. Don't bet on it. Take someone who gambles at a casino, for example. They will be wrapped up in their own personal relationship with money, which leads them to spend without stopping. Certainly places like casinos are fertile ground for this game of massacre. So until we are not absolutely clear on how we look at money and how we spend it, let's keep our distance from places that seem harmless but are not. 2. When opportunity knocks. Money makes us think that we can have everything we want whenever we want it. But that's not exactly true. Money is not necessarily the way to get everything. This is where our mind comes into play, so we need to start choosing. If I manage to get one thing, I am not necessarily going to get another. The solution is not only to consider what I can buy with money, but also to think about what I am giving up at the same time. We should think about other ways to spend the sum that we are going to use. 3. A value proposition. Let's look at some examples that can help us understand how humans attribute value to things. The Native Americans sold Manhattan for a few pearls and some flowers. How could they have understood the value of the land if they didn't know what it was going to be used for? Some people pay $4 for a coffee when you can buy one for just $1 only a few feet away. There are people that spend $10,000 for a holiday and spend 20 minutes looking for free parking every time they take the car. King Richard III sold his kingdom for a horse. For a horse! These are not just simple mistakes, they are ways to look at and think about money. It is difficult to think about the costs of the opportunities that arise and to consider their real value in a clear way. We often make strange choices. Strange because we unconsciously change our perception of value. How to learn to assess the correct value of money. 1. We often tend to forget that it's all relative. What do we mean by that? We mean that we are not autonomous, and we are not for 2 reasons. 1. When we are unable to assess the value of an object, we compare it to others that in our non-objective eyes seem equal. 2. We always choose the simplest, easiest, and most immediate comparison for us, acting impulsively and too quickly. What's wrong with doing that? we only use one term of comparison. Let's look at a classic example. When we evaluate the price of an item on sale and we don't take into account its original price. The original price which is often jacked up to balance out the sale price. Another example of a very common assessment error, which is also widely used by entities that encourage us to spend, is that when we have no idea of the cost of the original item, we tend to choose the intermediate option or the one that seems closest to it. So not the cheapest and not the most expensive one. It is not necessarily a mistake, but this lack of awareness causes damage that could be avoided if we began to recognize our perception of value and the way we attribute it to things. 2. We always try to avoid pain. There is nothing we can do about it. Who doesn't feel a certain type of pain or irritation when they spend money? So where does this negative feeling come from? It springs from the time it takes to consume the things that we buy. The shorter time it takes us to consume, the less we suffer, or we suffer less if the payment is in the future, and on how much the actual act of paying costs us. A brilliant strategy on a worldwide level was the invention of credit cards that enable us to lessen or even eliminate the pain involved in paying for stuff. In this way, we are likely to spend more, with greater autonomy and with a greater sense of freedom. Why? Obviously because the credit card detaches us from reality. It makes our perception of money less concrete. We can also choose to avoid the pain of paying altogether with an all-inclusive package for our honeymoon, provided that it does not rain all the time in the place that we have chosen to spend our holiday. One thing that we do need to face and accept is the fact that spending on food for primary and secondary goods will always be necessary, so we can use cash for this to be more aware of what we are spending. 3. Maybe we have too much faith in ourselves? We can't deny that we overestimate ourselves. We think that we can make our choices without delay, and that is not the case at all. We trust ourselves too much. This leads us to make mistakes, also because deciding on the basis of just a few impressions that we get in a brief moment does lead us to make mistakes. Remember that the value we perceive depends on our reading of the price lists available to us, which are by no means neutral, but are developed to encourage us to spend. We tend to believe in a price list, and if something has a high price, we think it also has a high value, because that is what we are told. Unless we are not experts in the sector, that mistake is tripled. Let's not forget the other subtle mechanism. We make decisions similar to those we have made in the past, and even if things have changed since then, we are still convinced that we are doing the right thing. 4. We overestimate what we have. The very fact of owning something makes us attribute a higher value to it than its real value, because it is natural for us to think and believe that other people can also see this higher value, and above all, that they are willing to pay for it. This mechanism is used by copywriters to make us fall in love with products. They write in such a way that we think the products are already ours, not to mention the surplus that we attribute to things we made ourselves. A classic example of this being the IKEA effect. We buy IKEA furniture, load it in the car, put it together, make mistakes, take it apart, and then put it back together, however we like, attributing to it the value of the effort it took us to build it. 5. We are always concerned with showing our efforts and our results. Let's say that we feel that the given price of a product is fair, which in our opinion fits in with the laws of the market. Okay, that's not how it works. Let's take a rainstorm and an umbrella selling for $10 that we would normally never pay more than $5 for. Our necessity drives us to accept prices that are completely unreasonable. This is also called the scarcity of an asset in a given market. 6. We are led to believe in the magic of the language of rituals. Language is the vehicle that best accesses our subconscious. It has the power to influence us and make us have a deeper appreciation for our experiences. Language determines the way that we look at life and the way that we pigeonhole the experiences that we have. Why? Because we make our decisions based on the descriptions that we give to things. We don't even look at the things themselves. So the language doesn't really reflect the product that we have in front of us, but it actually changes the way we look at it. When a copywriter talks about the bouquet of a wine, or they use terms such as artisanal or handmade, it highlights the part of the experience that they want us to remember and firmly plants it in our minds. The same method is used with rituals. In this case, it is our gestures that change the value of the experiences that we have. 7. We are always bombarded with expectations. If we expect drinking a certain wine from a crystal glass will make it taste better than drinking it from a broken mug, then it will, even if the wine is the same in both cases. Our expectations come before our enjoyment because we dream and we imagine, and if everything goes according to our plans, we will be overwhelmed with pleasure, making us inclined to pay more each time for this experience. Yet it is still just a self-imposed experience. Our expectations can change our brain and our body's reactions. In the end, this is what branding does. It exponentially increases our perception of value. It tells us, you really liked this, and of course, we appreciate it. 8. We often lose control. It's quite clear. We need to increase our level of self-control and spend time over the decisions we care about, the ones that are important to us. From a financial point of view, there are very important, medium-sized, and unimportant decisions. For important ones, such as buying a house, taking out a mortgage, or making any type of investment, you have to stop and think carefully. The real mistake is to give too much importance to money. 3 strategies to give money a real value. Let's learn a few strategies to help us assess the monetary value of goods in the most balanced way possible. 1. Put your money where your mind is. Do your research. If we have no idea how much something costs, we should load up on patience and do some real research. Online, offline, asking friends, especially if we are planning on buying something expensive like a car. However, it is also important not to get overloaded with information, which can cloud our decisional ability and leave us confused. 2. How to have self-control. We need to be careful of something that is known as the contract of Ulysses. These are contracts that lock us into terms and conditions for long periods of time. Something that could help us is to decide beforehand an amount of money that we want to save every month, and tie it up in a way that we can't be persuaded to spend it. Let's change our relationship with our credit card. How? By turning automatic expenses, such as those we use our credit card for, into automatic savings. 3. Stop and think for a moment. We must be willing to have constructive conversations about money and think about some good management strategies. We should talk about money with people that we know to get a better understanding of it, sharing experiences and expectations, and learning to manage it better, thus being able to make decisions for our wallets. We can't emphasize enough that sharing a balanced relationship with money with the people around us will create a large domino effect, and we will have started a chain of sensible behavior. Be careful around money, but don't worry about it too much. Through this book, the authors have tried to highlight the most common behaviors people display when it comes to money. Often nobody stops to think, whereas we need to get it into our heads that we should stop and stop again and yet again for both our psychological and mental well-being. Life is full of decisions to be made, small ones, big ones, and even repetitive ones. This does not mean that we should mull over every single action that has to do with money, but it does mean that we should be careful without worrying too much. Just enjoy life. Quotes. Don't think that you are too clever to make mistakes. A wise man knows himself. A stupid man opens his wallet and settles all doubt. Sometimes ignorance is a bliss. The less you know, the less you depend. Take-home message. Becoming aware of our mental limitations offers us control over our financial decisions and enriches our lives. Because yes, money is important, but we are much more important. Sharing our financial culture teaches us to better manage our money.